Sarah Jensen is a dedicated leader in mental health advocacy, peer support, and program development. She has a passion for empowering families and individuals, and she does that through trauma-informed and culturally responsive care. As the program director at Dad's Move, she oversees initiatives focused on youth violence prevention, family centered support, and peer driven services. She's also the founder of Holistic Solutions, where she provides training on holistic healing and certified peer counseling. With over a decade of experience in behavioral health, Sarah has facilitated peer support programs. She's supervised certified peer support specialists, and she's developed tools to enhance service accessibility. She's a national and international presenter on mental health topics, including trauma-informed care and peer support models, as well as family resiliency. Sarah holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and an Associate of Science in Human Services from Columbia College, and she's currently pursuing a Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling at Walden University. Sarah's commitment to social equity, advocacy, and holistic approaches drives her mission to create inclusive, effective mental health systems for families nationwide. I've known Sarah for a lot of years, and I'm really excited to be able to bring her story into our podcast, The Other Nine. All
Hey.
right, so hi, Sarah.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining me for my podcast, which is called The Other Nine. And we named it that because we know that SAMHSA has the 10 guiding principles of recovery, one of which is peer support, which gets all the attention because it has a billing code. And so I want to talk about the other nine, which, let's just go through them for our friends at home. It's recovery emerges from hope. Recovery is person driven. Of course, there goes the lawnmower. Recovery occurs via many pathways. Recovery is holistic, supported by peers and allies, supported through relationships and social networks, culturally based and influenced. It's supported by addressing trauma, involves individual, family, and community strengths, and recovery is based on respect. So,
Mhm.
right? So, I've been talking about recovery for 25 years. And so, what I want to know from you, as I asked you earlier, is, what gives you hope?
And I still have to say there's two different answers.
Yes, and I want to hear
Um,
both of
yeah,
them.
yeah. So I think, I mean, the sappy, corny, um, what you hear, what you're expected to hear, if you will, air quotes. Of course, my family. I mean, let's be sappy for a second.
Yeah,
The ones who
yeah.
have stuck by me through my recovery, who were there, who asked the questions, who were present. Those family members, well, you know what, let's be honest, even the ones that didn't, because I think about that and it gives me some hope of what who I am and where I've come and what I want in my life and don't. Um
Yeah.
we won't go any
And
further than
don't,
that,
right? That's
but
the
there we
big
go.
piece. And
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah, and don't. Because there's some people that it doesn't matter if they're blood or not. You know, there you don't get me if you can't be there for all of me. You just don't. Uh, for part of recovery though. So back to hope. Um, the other part that gives me hope, I think, is the work that we not that are in this field, whether it's direct peer services or whether it's some of us who've been in it for a while. And we look back not only on the people we've helped, but also where we've come as a movement.
Amen.
That gives me a lot of hope too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this and you can answer it or not. What are you recovering from?
Life.
That's a great answer.
Um, so it just for those of you that may not know me, I should come with a disclaimer with this. Um, so no, I don't mind sharing, and that's part of story, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of complex trauma, survivor
Hmm.
of a lot of different situations that caused complex trauma.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I talk about very often is I also am in recovery from an eating disorder.
Hmm.
Um, and I mentioned that because it actually really came back pretty heavily, and I totally went right back into old patterns. No, that's not a problem. This isn't, right? Fortunately, I happened to be in a class for school, and I had to pick a project,
Oh.
something to abstain from, a behavior to abstain from. Yeah. For 7 weeks.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was really, really interesting. It kind of gives me a little bit of hope too that some schooling is starting to change,
Yes.
right? As a counseling course, that it's trying to bring some of those peer principles into that work as well. But I had to talk about what those challenges were and really recognize that that's what was happening and got back on track. Long-winded story. There's a few other things in there, some that I probably won't talk about here just because they can be pretty activating, and I don't want
Right.
anybody to worry about any activation warnings. So there's a few others, but they fall under complex trauma.
It's really interesting that you say that because about 6 or 8 months ago, I stopped eating sugar. And it was my son was in the hospital,
Hmm.
and he was in the hospital for a month, and we knew he was going to be in there for a while longer. He's fine now. He's doing really, really well. But that's just a great excuse to just start shoving sugar in your mouth. So
Hmm.
somebody asked me if I wanted something, and I said no, thank you to sugar because I recognized that it would be really not helpful and it would just really set me off for that day. I just didn't really want
Right.
to shove sugar in my face. So then the next day, it was the same thing. I was like, no, let's try it again today. And then the next thing I knew, it had been a week since I'd eaten sugar. And I said to myself, hey, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing this. Life changing. Life
Right.
changing. I popped out of a depression I've been in for years. I yeah, I mean, I thought I was over it, but then I really popped out of it, right? As opposed to the
Hmm.
in and out and a low scale, but then I completely popped out of it. And I've just been really able to focus on a lot of other things, but it's shocking. And I also really struggle with food stuff. I think it's connected to the complex trauma. I really do.
Oh
Um,
yeah. My eating disorder started because of my trauma,
yeah,
because of a particular traumatic event. So
got it. Yeah.
I've been able to trace it back
Oh,
through a
nice.
lot of work. A
Yeah.
lot.
Right? I think that eating issues are so hard compared to other things. It's just because it's so innate in everything we do, and it's infused in every culture. There's traditions around
Hmm.
food, and um, and it's generational, and
Oh yeah.
it's just, I mean, it's one of those things we could do a really deep dive in around eating in recovery and how food has such a critical role in recovery
Right.
for both mental health
Yep.
and from an addiction perspective.
Hmm.
And a lot of people
Oh
don't
yeah.
talk about it.
Right.
So, I mean, because if you're like you are thin, I am not. And so on me, people would be like, oh, yeah, we can see that's an issue. But like for you, it's like, well, really? You? So, it's thanks for talking about it.
Which, and that's I really quickly, and we don't have to stay on this topic much longer. We can move on, I promise. But that's actually something that's really frustrating for me is because I'm the heaviest I've ever been. So for me, when someone's like, "Oh, you're so thin," I'm like, "I look like a disgusting whale. What are you talking about?" Not
Mm-hmm.
because I think weight on other people doesn't look good. I have no problems with I'm learning that I actually might some societal things.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
but as the person, I don't
Right.
see, right? But on me, because I also have body dysmorphia.
A huge body dysmorphia.
Yeah, yeah,
I look back at
exactly.
pictures from when I was younger and I thought I was just horrible and I would kill to look like that again.
Right. Well, I don't know if I want to go back that far because I was too thin.
Well, yeah, we don't,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
We want
yeah.
to stay
So I
healthy.
don't want to go that far. But maybe 10 years ago then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
10 years ago would be fantastic.
Right.
Of course, There was one time we were posing for a picture, and my brother said, "You're never going to be younger or thinner, so just enjoy the picture now." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so true." So we just,
Oh,
so
I
just
love him.
relax and
He's
smile. That's my brother.
right.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So, let me ask you this. I've heard a little bit about your story. I know over the years, because you and I have known each other for a long time. When did we meet? Do you remember?
2016, 2015.
You remember that?
Yeah, I
What were
do.
we doing?
I remember exactly what we were doing
Really? Because I
because I
don't.
called you.
Really? Tell me all about
Yeah,
it.
I called you because I was dead set. I was brand new baby peer. Well, not brand new baby peer. I had been working as a peer, I think 2 years at that point. Yeah, about 2 years. And I'd heard this buzz about holding the hope and how you've done trainings and yeah, if you want to do trainings, you should check out Mary Jadwisiak. She's great. Okay. But I really, really wanted to do my DBT skills training.
Oh, yeah.
And I reached out to you and you're like, I don't know. Let me see what you got. That sounds interesting. So I did, and I sent you the slideshows, everything. I sent you all of it. And you're like, oh my God, nobody's ever done this. What the heck? And
Yeah,
then we
people
went out.
usually come to me with an idea, like, "Hey, let's
Yeah.
do this." And then I'm like, "Okay, go do it." And then I never hear from them again. But you were ready.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it's still one of my main, even when I'm not employed as a peer, I'm gonna just put it that way because I will always be a peer.
Right.
It's something I still want to do because I think it's vital for peers to have that knowledge.
What is it about DBT that you think is so critical for folks? Why
Um,
DBT?
I love that question, Mary.
It's
I
like I
will
know
try.
you.
It's like you know me. Exactly. Well, and I will try not to take up 2 hours in sharing this. So why DBT? So here's the thing, I'll give my perspective. As somebody who had been in multiple different modalities of therapy, the go-to typically was cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. And if anybody's been through CBT, it's a pretty set. This is how you do it. This is, and it's the triangle of here's the emotion, here's the reaction, all of that fun stuff, right? Well, that works great for people who know that there's more than just happy, sad, mad, and glad
Hmm.
because you're able to make those connections. Well, for somebody who's gone through a lot of complex trauma or who has some underlying things, there's a lot of in between there.
Hmm.
There between connecting emotion and outcome, there's a whole encyclopedia of things that happen.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand that for a variety of reasons. So when I went through DBT in a very unorthodox manner, I got very lucky. Um, it happened in a really bad time, and it was instrumental in my own recovery. So that's part of why DBT. The other part is the effectiveness, because it helps you with that encyclopedia of the realm that is human emotion and experiences and reactions and responses and all of that stuff that comes in between that is so nuanced and so ah, what the heck? How? And it shows you how and why and ideas of what to do and how to do it without telling you what to do, how to do it, why to do it. And for me and for the people that I've worked with throughout the number of years I've been up here, we'll just put it that way. Um, I know you've been up here way longer.
Not
Um,
really. Not really.
it has been more effective, the most effective of the modalities that I have been exposed to as a peer in particular. And it was the one modality that actually worked for me. That's why. I
Okay.
kept it under 30 minutes.
Yeah. 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 Tell me a little bit about your story. Tell us, I mean, because
uh,
this whole podcast is about people that are in long-term recovery
mhm,
and that things that the skills that you've learned that you think you could pass on. So like,
mhm,
and I don't want it to be like a big giant trauma dump,
right, right.
but what are some of the, I guess, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned throughout your recovery, and how did you learn them?
Humility.
Ooh, stop it. I love that because I love it when in AA when a newcomer's in there and they've been there like a year or so, and somebody says, "And then I prayed for humility," and the whole room starts laughing because we all know, anybody who's been there, the old timers, we all know, oh, you don't get that just by praying for it. You got to go through some stuff to get that. So,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. So
Yes.
talk about how you got humility.
Yeah. So through life. Yeah, let's not do a big trauma dump. So I'll just give you the highlights.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
early adulthood into 30s, pretty rocky. Lots of different things, lots of different um life stuff that led me to this complex cannoli of a human and
I love
affected
that.
every
A
aspect.
cannoli of a human because you got the soft shell. The
Exactly.
crunchy, beautiful,
It,
flaky, crunchy shell with the beautiful sweetness or whatever on the inside. Soft.
yes,
That's a
yes.
fantastic. As a person who doesn't eat sugar, man, now I want a cannoli.
Well, I'm working on trying
It,
to find ways of having sweet things without it having added sugar. So I'll work
hey,
on that.
here's my favorite, right? Here we all know this quote, right? Take the gun, leave the cannoli. Or is it leave the gun, take the cannoli? I can never remember.
I can't remember either, but yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anyway.
Um, so yeah, so all of these things converged and severely affected my parenting. And this
Yes.
is I talk about this a lot because I used to work in wrap. Well, it was wraparound, now it's wise. Um, so I would share this part with parents is that I did have my kids removed.
Yeah.
I was in an active dependency and I did not get my younger son back. So
Yeah.
that right there, I mean, when you've got the department comes in, DCYF comes in and like, okay, well, you have these deficiencies. You've
Mm,
got a couple of choices to make.
mhm.
And that right there is like, all right, well, what are you going to do? And of course, when you're a cannoli of a human with all of these traumas and experiences, your first instinct is not to say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. Please teach me.
No, it is not.
Especially when they've got your kids.
They got your
Uh,
kids. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
So there
gosh.
was there was a lot of lessons with, and in those lessons was some beautiful, just lifeline moments. That's where I got involved with DBT. Um, and it just so not to name drop, and that's not why I'm doing it, but I'll just share a little bit of what that looked like because I don't know how it got selected. The attorney that I had to help with my dependency happened to know the person who helped Marshall Lenehan create DBT back in the day.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah. And so Marshall Lenehan is still at UW, still at BRTC. She was still at the time, she was working on the revision of her second book,
Okay.
the one that I now use as my skills training guide.
Mm-hmm.
So she was doing her thing to redo it, right? She needed people for case studies and whatnot. Well, because I wasn't the traditional, I was one of those where they were looking at eating disorder, they were looking at trauma, they were looking at anxiety, all of these other diagnoses that we don't need to be mucked down with right now. The labels. She was like, yeah, I'll take her on.
Wow.
Yeah. So she oversaw my treatment plan. I don't know how out of the most horrific nightmare I could have ever lived through, and then to have that
Yeah.
was just, and that's again part of the reason why I'm so tied to DBT is just because of how impactful it was. So went through all of that. I got my older son back. Um, we're
How
doing
long did that take? How long did that take, Sarah?
he was in dependency for about a year and a half, and then he did an in-home placement for about 6 months, and was home while we were doing the termination trial, which typically is about 2 weeks. When GC does a termination trial, mine lasted for 4 weeks.
And that was for your younger son?
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. That had to be terrible.
it was it, and it still is. And
Yeah,
there are
right.
days we're coming up on the 9th. will be 11 years since I last saw him.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's some feelings about the closed adoption that I didn't have a choice on it being open or closed, those sort of things. Those they
Yeah.
come up. That's part of recovery, right? Is having those big waves come and navigating those emotions and still being able to stay like, that sucked. And tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah. Without
Yeah,
minimizing. It's a difference.
exactly.
It's a difference,
Yeah,
when people go, well, he's in a better place, or, you could have been worse. You could have lost both of them. And,
right.
that just is not helpful.
No.
But to be able to honestly feel what you're feeling, acknowledge your part in it, right? And just
Hmm.
be like, okay, so this is what we have now. And how am I going to be the best person I can be today?
Yeah. Well, and how am I going to be a better parent?
Yes.
That was the other part because I mean there was a time there I went immediately went back into therapy.
Well, sure.
Patient trial was over. I was on the phone that next day. Like I need to see somebody. And that's actually how I found out about peer work.
Ah, okay.
Because through all of this, even through the dependency, I was never offered a peer,
Hmm.
not once. So I happened to be at a doctor's appointment and I saw a flyer for, I'm going to name drop Valley Cities. Um, and that's where I learned about peer work. I'm like, I want to do that. That's going to make sense of what just happened because I'm going to be able to help other parents. I'm going to be able to help
Mm.
other people.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I wanted because it happened for a reason. All of this happened for a reason, whether I
We
like it
try
or
to
not.
make sense of things that don't make sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
There's got
and
to be something. Yeah.
right,
It can't just
uh,
be random.
no, and I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And also at the same time, if I had my younger son, both my kids are special needs,
Okay.
both of them, and on opposite ends of special
Yeah.
needs. And my younger one was intermittently not able to walk, and he's nonverbal. So it was a lot of care.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do my peer work. I wouldn't be where I am if this living nightmare I had for 2 years didn't happen.
Yeah.
And if I didn't learn from it, that's where that humility comes from. Back to your original question. That's where the humility comes from.
Hmm.
Honestly, and I mean, I've worked with enough families because I started out with adults and then I did adults and families and then the wraparound program. You can never, in my opinion, it's never compare yourself to somebody else or your situation to somebody else. Like, oh, you have it so much worse, or oh man, that was worse than what I went. No, it's different because we all have different experiences. We all come from different places, and we all struggle. We're all human. We all need connection, and we all need hope.
Hmm.
And when we can figure out how to share our humanness with somebody else and to, as you say, hold the hope, literally sometimes,
Yeah.
that is almost to me a form of pure magic. And pure as in Pure
Right.
and pure magic at the same time. That's what we need. I think that's part of what we need more of in society is that reconnection to just our basic humanness with each other.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that comes in terms of culture,
Yeah.
right? Oftentimes, how those connections are expressed is cultural.
Yeah.
And um, and so when we look at those other nine, culture's right in there. And
Oh yeah.
family and community are right in there, right? Is the influence of those. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. When you were going through all that, was there anything that made you feel respected?
When I was going through my stuff, absolutely not.
Really?
Not even a little bit.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that was part of the hardest thing is even even I was required to find a job. That's a whole nother story that we won't get into right now because I laugh about it because they got in trouble. Um, because they're not supposed to be able to require you to get a job. I needed a job. We all know that I needed a job,
Right?
whatever.
Jobs are
But
good.
jobs are good, right? And unfortunately, the job that I had, there was absolutely no respect. Everybody thought that I was a mess up, and it was like being in high school, but not. when I was in high school because I was kind of not popular, but not popular. So high school wasn't horrible, but it was like I was back in some kind of horrific high school where everybody hated me and you always showed up to class half naked. It was
Ew.
not fun.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
no,
That
it
would
was
be
not fun.
horrible.
Uh, I learned a lot from that job too. And um that's what my daytime was. And then I'd go and I would have visits and they didn't do my visits at the same time with both of my kids because they put one 2 hours north from me and one an hour south from me.
Holy cow. So you were just always on the road.
Always. And it was constantly, I was never good enough. I never was in full compliance, even though I was doing everything that they wanted me to do. They accused me of things that my psychiatrist and psychologist proved that wasn't accurate, but they didn't care. They
Right.
wouldn't enter it in. So no, there was never, other than from my partner and a few close friends during that time, I never felt an ounce of respect from anyone other than those few select core people.
Where do you find respect now?
Well, still from my partner and core select people.
I was going to say, you're still with him.
Yes,
He's an
yes, I am.
extraordinary human. I've met him. He's
He
pretty
is.
awesome.
Well, and
Kind of the
they're
strong
not by,
silent type.
that's an understatement. He really is. And
Yeah.
that he's one we've talked about that. He's like, well, but you say it better than I do. I'm like, but that's not always correct. Your voice matters. And
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and the thing is, he's not even biologically their father, and he was doing anything and everything he could to get them back. So yes, he's an extraordinary human.
Yeah.
And so my few core people, of course, my work, and I don't mean respect as in, oh well, you said to do this, so I have to do it. That's not what I, to me, that's not what respect looks like. It's more of there's a mutual, for me, respect is a mutual respect
Yeah.
of I value what you're saying. You value what I'm saying. I feel respect from you. I feel respect from your team. Shout out to Holding the Hope. Um,
Holding the
from
Hope is a fantastic organization,
right, seriously.
if I may
So
say so myself.
somebody really should do a study on them. No, throw more money at though.
Right. Yes,
My
please.
coworkers, my
Oh, that's
coworkers
nice.
at
Yeah.
another place. Just lots of, I think my definition of respect also looks different, especially as I've been in recovery. I don't I don't think I search for respect as much as I feel respect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Because you can do without now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did without.
Right.
Yeah,
But also because you created your own self-respect.
exactly.
For me, I
Yep.
just have recently come to that notice in my life. I just have recently been able to really embrace that and like, oh yeah, look at me. I have self-respect. So I don't really care
Right.
what other people say anymore. It's
Who
shockingly
knew?
freeing. It's so freeing.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So as we're looking through these guiding principles of the recovery, one of the things that I really want to talk about is because so it's for me in my recovery, both in my recovery from alcoholism and my recovery in my mental health recovery, um, personal responsibility is a
Mhm.
core, is an absolute core to all of it. It just doesn't happen without personal responsibility. And
Mhm.
I mean, I know that there is a part of it, both of those, that's kind of out of control, but there's also a component that we absolutely have responsibility for. And the
Mhm.
consensus statement on recovery called out personal responsibility. They called it out like there it was. But it's in the new version of these guiding principles of recovery, um, because, over the course of time, these definitions have merged and morphed and
Right.
the whole industry has merged and morphed. And so as they merged in mental health recovery with substance use disorder recovery, it changed from self personal responsibility to person driven. And it's a subtle
Okay.
difference, but I think it encompasses it, right? Because you have to take responsibility if you're going to be the one making choices. If you're
Hmm.
going to be the one
Sure.
who is really going to be driving the bus, right? You're driving the car.
Hmm.
You're not sitting next to the driver navigating, and you're not in the back seat napping.
Right.
You're driving. So that requires some personal responsibility. And I think for me, one of the things that addiction and mental illness really rob from you is that sense of autonomy and
Yes.
any sense of power.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm wondering, what, like, do you remember a time when you realized you had some personal autonomy and was able to make some personal choices and take responsibility?
There's two that come to mind. So I tell this story just because I think it's absolutely hilarious. I remember it crystal clear, like car I was in, the road I was on, what was in front of me. Goes back to my partner. We'd been together for about, I think, 7 years at this point, right? That's a long time,
That's a long
one
time.
would think, right?
Yeah.
Right? And it was like a lightning bolt. And I just all of a sudden realized I could tell him no. It
Oh,
was like, what? I didn't have to be perfect. I could be me. I didn't have to do what he wanted me to do, and it would be okay. After 7 years.
hey, that's pretty good.
Now, mind you,
Was he
you've
shocked the first time you said no?
no.
Yeah, right?
I was
He's
gonna
known
say
it all along.
you've met him. He's one of the most laid back guys ever. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of why we do well together. I mean, I was a very different person when we first got together. I was incredibly high strung, high anxiety, highly reactive, very different person.
Hmm.
And he was just, okay, it'll be fine. We can make this work. Always, always. I think he raised his voice to me twice in
Wow.
almost 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why it was so funny that it was just like, I still remember that crystal clear. And then I also remember more to the point of our conversation here. Um, I I was driving to a therapy appointment and I lived in North Seattle and I was driving to Bellevue because that's where my therapist was.
How far of a drive
Um,
is that for people who aren't familiar with Seattle?
oh, that's a great question, Mary. We're some podcast. That's probably
People
helpful to
over there
know.
in Montana really want to know.
Right, right. So it was probably a good one way. I was probably driving about 45 minutes because I was usually going with traffic.
Okay.
So it was about 45 minutes one way, which when you don't have a lot of money, you live in Washington with super high gas prices, that was a commitment.
Yeah.
And I'm in the car, I'm like, I I'm going to talk to somebody that I'm talking to like my friend. Like I'm teaching her, I was literally teaching her about DBT.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was getting ready to do a cohort at the BRTC, the Behavior Research Training Center at UW, with a DBT cohort. And so she's asking me all of these questions, and I'm thinking about it as I'm driving, like, I don't need therapy anymore.
Oh,
Wait, can I do that? So I got there and I told her, I said, I'm wondering if I need to keep coming. And she's like, oh my goodness, I was actually going to ask you about that today. I was like, wait, I can say no. I can
yes.
say that I don't need therapy anymore. She's like, you don't, you got this.
Isn't
It
that
was,
something?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said something to me once, and we were talking about this a completely different context. It was it was the concept of if you give people permission to say no, for instance, young girls learning about sex, you have the right to say no, young lady, then that means they also have the right to say yes.
Hmm.
And so if you're giving a person a choice to say, right, self-determination, you can say yes, you can say no. That, that's a same side of that's both two sides of the same coin, that
Hmm.
choice. So, which, religious people and conservative people, when it comes to children having sex, they just really don't want girls to have the opportunity to say yes. Because,
Right.
right? But you do have the opportunity to say no. So
Right.
it's
And you
so
better do it.
yeah, so it's just really interesting in life. I think for me, and we've seen this a million times, right? When somebody finally says, "I've decided to say yes,"
Hmm.
I've decided to say yes. I've decided to say yes because we just say no so much all the time.
Right.
And just I've for on in my life, I remember I used to do yoga for years. I would take yoga classes. It was a fantastic studio here in town, and through as you transition, the teacher is moving you from one position to the next, and right leg back, left leg forward, and the whole time I'm telling myself why I can't do it. As I'm doing it, I'm telling myself it's okay. You need to modify this. You really shouldn't be doing that. Fat girls can't do yoga. And just, I have this whole inner monologue going and about why I can't do this while I'm doing it. But clearly I'm not doing it 100%. You don't need to do it 100%. You can hold back. And then I would one of the things I loved about yoga is that no matter where I traveled, there was always a yoga class somewhere, and I could just go
Hmm.
online, find a yoga class in the evenings, and jump over and take that class. And I went to this little town. It was way north somewhere, and I went into this studio. It was a small little studio, and they had just finished a hot yoga class, so the room was still hot. And then we moved into an asana class, which is where you just move from movement to movement, and you're
Okay.
you're just going through a regular yoga class from pose to pose to pose, and it's very different. But the room was still hot, and it was a
Hmm.
workout. And I just kept going, and I got back to my hotel room, and I remember I parked. I got in the room and I parked. I didn't get in, I wasn't even in the room yet. I got into the parking lot and I parked the car in front of my hotel, and I just sat there and I was just stunned, physically stunned at what I had just done. And I said to myself, you can never have that inner monologue again, because what you just did was completely beyond what you ever thought possible. And so
Hmm.
we're just going to stop all that nonsense. And that, but I think one of the most powerful lessons I ever learned in my mental health recovery is that thoughts come before emotions. And it may be just a nanosecond before, but
Hmm.
the thoughts are what's driving your emotions. It's what's driving your mindset. And truly, if you can change your thinking, you absolutely can change so much about yourself. And that was the start for me, and really a huge shift for me, in my recovery. Instead of just like surviving in, like a BB in a pinball machine, right? You're just bouncing around doing the best you can, but to really being intentional about my life. That was the start to that. And also, when you're in recovery from addiction, and the process that you go through, that takes you have to those are choices that you have to make, and you have to take responsibility for the decisions that you made before and the behaviors that you made before. And I just feel like that is just the linchpin. That whole self-determination is the linchpin to getting
Hmm.
well and staying well. Because it's
Yep.
not just about, oh, I'm going to remove this. Like there's a saying in the rooms, you get a sober horse thief. I mean, if you sober up a horse thief, all you have is a sober horse thief. Right?
Exactly.
So you
Yep.
got it. So just removing the substance isn't enough. We have to do some internal mining, and we have to go upriver and really see where a lot of this stuff came from.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What are some of the other things that you think were the most impactful for you or surprising?
I'm still learning stuff. To me, that's surprising. Because I'm still learning stuff about myself.
Mm,
Um, and we all know recovery isn't linear. I mean, I spoke to about that just a few minutes ago when I was talking about my, reoccurrence of an eating disorder. Um, and I think that it's not that self-determination or the self-driven. is necessarily waxing and waning for me, but I think that part where you said where it's that linchpin, we have a decision to make on those thoughts that we have in our head. Are we going to recognize them and see them for what they are, or are we going to listen to them no matter what and then act on them? And even with as
Or
much,
for me, it's, I'm sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
For me, it's, are you going to ignore the thought and just indulge in the feeling?
There you go.
So
That
let's
too.
ignore the thought that started the feeling and just use the feeling as the starting place for all things.
Uh-huh. Yep. Oh, and that actually was actually building really well off of my point is that I've had this internal monologue for so long that I'm
Mm,
not good enough, or
right.
that I'm not smart enough, or you know what, you can name pretty much any negative thought, and I've probably had it, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of my recovery process right now. So for me, my recovery is not linear, of course, but it's always evolving.
Yeah.
And there are times where I'll have a bad parenting day. My son's 23, I still parent because he still lives at home,
Girl, my son is 45 and I still parent. I mean, it's like,
right?
how can I be, we are parents. It's a role, right?
Yeah,
So how can I be the best mom of a 45-year-old? It's very different
exactly.
than how can I be the best mom of a 8-year-old or a 17-year-old or in your case.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And meeting them where they're at.
right.
Because while your son is 45, happy, healthy 45-year-old, I'm assuming developmentally 45, mine is not developmentally a 23-year-old. I
Yeah,
need to meet him where he's at so
yeah.
that it works for him. And there are days
It's hard.
that's that some of those old habits want to come out.
Hmm.
There are some days where I react rather than respond, and then I need to make repair. Um,
Hmm.
but being able to know that that's what's needed is a big difference for me. To know that, oh, I'm really sorry, this wasn't how I wanted to do it. Let's come back to this. How would you like to do this? What do you think we need to do? And I do that sometimes with people I work with too. Like, hey, dude, I messed up. Let's fix this. Um, and I don't. If I were to have looked forward when I was just starting as a peer, sure, I would have thought that that would have been possible. Just where I'm at and just where things are at in my own recovery, I don't think I would have thought it was possible.
I know. I never thought I'd get this far.
Me either,
I mean, I didn't even know that this was a place I could get to.
right?
This is like, it's like, what, I look around sometimes and I think, holy cow, right? That unwed mother on welfare, she had no
Right?
idea what was in store for her.
Exactly. Like, sure, you might have had dreams of doing something one
I did
day,
not.
maybe.
No, I did not.
I never thought that I'd be able to.
I never allowed myself to dream. So people are like, "What's your
Yeah,
dream?" I'm like, "Mm-mm, mm-mm,
don't
mm-mm,
know. Don't
no,
have one.
mm-mm." And so, because when you're just reacting and
Yep.
there's no
Surviving.
and there's no intention, that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that I've noticed recently is that I'm really able to live my life with intention. So that
Yeah.
is such a gift of, for me, that's the gift of my recovery. And I'm just wondering, what if you had to say, what are some of the biggest gifts in your recovery that you've received?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, humility. First and foremost, hands down, humility. Uh,
Is that a gift?
right? Humanity
Oh,
as well as humility. Um, humanness. Just being human and allowing yourself to be human. We're not perfect. We will never be
hmm,
perfect.
hmm.
And that's perfect.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
I love
it,
that.
it just, yeah, and it is. I have to remind myself of that a lot. Like, okay, you're human. It's okay. That's how mistakes, we grow from those mistakes. They're not bad. That's another big one, is the welcoming and embracing what I view as a mistake as not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And grace.
grace. Ooh, yeah. That's a gift, isn't it?
Yeah.
A grace that we give ourselves, not to mention other people.
That's the hard part. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm working on right now is I give grace to people. I mean, there's a fine line between giving grace and being a doormat,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I've learned that fine line with others. I'm still learning it with myself.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the most important lessons you'd want, like, if you were like one person was like, what's the most important thing you want people to know about
About
recovery?
recovery, that it's possible.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. We're not just
And
trapped and stuck in our circumstances.
no, and it looks different for everybody. So even if somebody else has an idea of what your recovery could look like, well, one, that shit is a judgment. Yeah, no, we're not going to shit on anybody. No, no, no. Unless we try to want to avoid it at least. Um, but everybody has recovery. They can have recovery if they want it.
Hmm.
In what that looks like for them. It might not look the same for me. Like I might have a different view of what, and I've had this happen when I've been working with people. Like, oh yeah, recovery would look like this for them, like in my head, right? I would never say it out
Right?
loud because I don't want
Yeah.
to put that on them.
Right.
Um, but in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, if they could just do this, it'd be like they got it. Oh wait, that's not for me to do. That's
Right.
for them. This isn't my lesson. This is their life. This is their story.
So hard.
Right?
I just
It
want to,
is.
I just kind of want to jump in and fix. I want to control. I want to just be like, hey, listen, here's what you need to do.
Right?
The other thing I want to
Oh,
do is I want to be like, listen, the problem with that is dot 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 dot.
yes.
That's my
Yes.
other default is I'm listening to this person speak only so that I can find fault in exactly what it is they want to do because for whatever reason that's my default too. And so I just have to when I hear that in my head I have to shut up.
Yep. Yep.
Well, Sarah, this has been a delight. I really am so grateful that you jumped on here with me and had this conversation. And I feel like you've landed in over there at Dad's Move. Like that is just the perfect spot for you.
Oh, thank you. It's been interesting.
Yeah. Well, and you've
It's been
gotten a
interesting.
lot of new responsibilities and it
Yeah.
feels like the perfect spot for
Yeah.
now. Right. I mean, everything changes and molds, but it seems like this was a really good fit.
Yeah. I think so. And I think it happened when it was supposed to. We're growing, which
Oh,
is really great. And I'm really excited to see about, where we go and how we change and how we evolve because it's the mission of Dad's Move of having that father involvement, getting dads reconnected with their families, and helping them be the best dad that they want to be is, in my opinion, one of the big things that we're missing. We need both parents, even if they're not together, parents shoot, available for the kid. Our kids need both parents.
right.
They need that biologically. Studies have shown that. So as society, in my opinion, this is an opinion, this isn't a fact. I think one of the big disservices that we've done is we've removed dads from the family in a variety of ways. Some of it I think may have been slightly intentional and some of it has not been. And what do we do about that?
Hmm. What's it like
So
working in a male environment? Because, most of your coworkers are men.
they are. Well, we have 50-50 at the moment, but yes, yes, most of my coworkers will be, especially when we get a bigger staff. It's been interesting because there's definitely a different way than men and women think
Hmm.
and process and communicate.
Hmm.
And it's also been really helpful. And really exciting isn't quite the right word, but it's somewhere between good and exciting. Somewhere there's a word in between those two.
All right.
not finding it at the moment, but it's been great. It really has. And the opportunities that of growth that I've had there. Um, and that I think that dad's move has had too.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say to the good folks out there in the podcast land of last minute words of encouragement?
Words of encouragement, there's so many different things we could say, but I do think that for anybody that is truly drawn to peer work, to truly helping people without their own agenda, that's peer work.
Mm-hmm.
It's so needed and it's worth the risk. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen when we take a risk into a new career. We don't know. And it could be exactly what you needed.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you know what to do, right?
Stay hopeful.
Stay hopeful. Bye.
Thanks, Mary.